Our first movie tells the story of a friendship behind prison walls that spans more than 20 years.
So welcome to episode 3 of Middlebrow Madness, an exercise in podcasting hubris. I think I'm going to stick with that one. My name is Derek Gaday.
I'm Michelle Arf.
So what the hell is Middlebrow Madness, you may ask? Well, let me tell you.
Besides a terrible idea that I had.
I don't think it's a terrible idea, but I do think we're definitely in it for the long haul if we see this one through to the end. Because just from pure mathematics, it's a wildly ambitious thing that we're doing. What we've done is we've taken the IMDb top 250 films of all time, plus 6 wild cards to round out the bracket. These 256 movies, through the tried and true bulletproof method of the single elimination bracket, we will find the champion, the best film of the list. And I guess, using the metrics of the IMDb list, the greatest movie of all time. Asterisk.
Very large asterisk. One of the biggest ones I can remember having in any podcast that I've done.
I mean, for your old show, I mean, I don't know if we should talk about our other podcasts on this podcast, but on your old show, you at least had you had a say into what was canon worthy. I mean, that was the whole gimmick.
Whereas this was given to us by the masses over at IMDb.
Yeah, we went out to imdb.com and received the stone tablets of the podcast from the users. And, well, here we are. And now we're going to talk about these fucking movies.
Some fun behind-the-scenes facts for anyone listening to episodes 3 and 4 is that I'm currently eating dinner because we're starting this a little later than I expected to. So if you hear me, I'm going to try to edit it out, but if you hear me eating pizza or drinking lambic beer, then... Or if you see me getting progressively more belligerent during episode 2 of this, then you'll know why.
Yes, if Michelle starts yelling at me in maybe not a friendly way when episode 4 comes out, you'll know why.
I'll just be pulling my my Woody Allen, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Not this episode, but next episode. But there's no shortage of bad dudes in this episode, and oh boy, we ran the bad dude gauntlet this week.
Yeah, Some of these matchups are fascinating in the fact that most of what we're going to talk about is just the creators of the films themselves and not the actual films.
Yeah, well, invariably, creator and creation inform each other. But
this is going to be the episode, and the 2 episodes, rather, that really test our ability to discuss whether we're going to separate artist from artist or not. Sorry, art from artist. So,
this is our slate for this episode. We have... Braveheart versus Into the Wild, and Cinema Paradiso versus $1 Million Baby. Now, the rules that we've set up for ourselves is that we're giving ourselves 20 minutes to discuss each matchup, and we've got to land on a consensus between the two of us. And if we can't, well, we'll have to use one of our vetoes. We have 4 of them for this whole first round. We both have all 4. And I'm looking over the stats, and I don't think we're going to be using any this episode, Michelle.
No, I don't think so either. I'm interested to see when we eventually do use them, because I feel like on a lot of these we're pretty either in lockstep or we don't care enough to actually have the drawn out fight about it.
Yeah, I think we're pretty simpatico on a lot of these. I think it's going to be there's some ridiculous matchups further up in the bracket that we hinted at on previous episodes.
Yes, certainly. There's some difficult questions that we have to answer later.
But these questions I think are pretty easy, so I think we should get right to it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go. Braveheart versus Into the Wild. Where do we want to start?
Well, I got some stats here, which I think might be interesting. Just a little tail of the tape for these two features. Braveheart, directed by Mel Gibson, released in 1995. 5 wins from 10 nominations at the Academy Awards in 1996. and made $210 million at the box office. It was not a notorious flop, making only 3 figures, but it was in fact a massive hit. And we also have, I wrote down the seed numbers, which I thought would be interesting. This is ranked 75 on the list, which is pretty high.
Much higher than I would have expected.
So this is the favorite going into this competition. The underdog, as it were, is Into the Wild, which is seated at number 182, directed by Sean Penn, released in 2007, based on the book of the same name by John Krakauer. 2 Oscar nominations, no wins, and a modest hit, $56 million on a $20 million budget. Now,
but a pretty big critical hit with certain corners. Like when I was doing research for the podcast, I found that actually a lot of people who used to write for The Dissolve really loved this movie and ended up placing very high on their list. I know like Genevieve Koski loves it, stuff like that. So
yeah, if I remember correctly, Tasha Robinson's a fan of this movie as well.
Correct.
And this is 2 movies made by reprehensible human beings.
Very true. As opposed to just one like we usually have.
Yeah, and they're both they're both these like not weird, but there's like these individualistic sort of, dream your dream, man, except one of them operates in a register that I like more than the other.
I think that's fair to say. I think, do we want to start with Braveheart or do we want to start with Into the Wild?
Let's start with Braveheart. This was my first do-si-do with Braveheart, which, if I recall, surprised you.
Your first do-si-do with Mel Gibson as a director. Am I not wrong?
That's true. I haven't seen Apocalypto or Passion of the Christ. This was my first. This is my first meeting with Mad Mel in the director's chair, and I kind of liked this, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was kind of rad.
I had a feeling it would kind of like. That's why I was surprised you said you hadn't seen it, because it seemed like a very good Derek movie in that it operates on this mythic register, this mythic kind of not quite a tone poem, like a tone rock song. It's just it is bludgeoning consistently, and not in necessarily a negative way, but it is the least subtle thing I think we've watched so far.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Except with the possible exception of Cool Hand Luke, but this is a lot more heavy-handed than Cool Hand Luke. Real quick plot description. Mel Gibson plays William Wallace, a Scottish nationalist, warrior poet, and basically
we should say not historical figure, because he is so different from the historical William Wallace. There's almost no point in comparing the two.
Sure, because this William Wallace basically just slaughters his way to Scottish independence. This movie is really fucking violent, and almost in like a Monty Python way at times, where it's like super excessive and theatrical.
Like when people get their hands cut off in this movie, it looks like the Black Knight that guards the bridge in Holy Grail.
That's exactly what I thought. Like the first sort of holy shit, they put this in a movie moment for me was when someone cuts off a dude's leg as he's moving and he just falls backwards. Like this is a fucking Tex Avery cartoon. And it's like, oh shit, it's going to be like this, isn't it? And then it gets real violent and real torture-y.
Yeah, that's one of the things I find fascinating about Gibson's work. I mean, we should say up front that Gibson is a terrible human being.
Real piece of shit.
Like it's not only like alleged things, like perhaps with Sean Penn has a lot of alleged problems. No, like we have documented proof that Mel Gibson is abusive, is anti-Semitic, is sexist, is super homophobic, and just seems to be all around a piece of shit. And the fact that he's still allowed to make movies in Hollywood is not great.
No.
But I do agree that Braveheart and all of his other films have this strange tonal, I wouldn't say problem, but irregularity, in that they're both ridiculously goofy and incredibly violent while trying to maintain a sense of seriousness and a sense of purpose that seem at odds with what it's also doing at the same time. Like, you haven't seen Apocalypto or Passion of the Christ, but Passion of the Christ, as many people have said, is a torture porn movie with Jesus, which at its face is ridiculous, although I must say I like that movie quite a bit. And then there's Apocalypto, which is a movie I like even more. And that's a movie that has a bunch of jokes about like people eating like balls, and then a guy gets chili peppers put in like his underwear. It's really strange. And then all of a sudden it becomes Rambo for a little bit. It's a very odd mix of things he tries to do.
And isn't the whole thing like in a dead language like Passion is?
Yes.
Oh man.
Which I kind of would have liked to see him attempt to do Braveheart in that way, like use old Scottish to try to like make it work.
Scots Gaelic or something.
Yeah.
Oh man. This like Gibson, like Mad Mel won a fucking Oscar for directing this thing. And this I think is a key kind of comparison point between Braveheart and Into the Wild, whereas I can kind of see why the Academy would reward this, because this is very like bombastic. I mean, there is a sense of direction in this film. You can't, there's vision here. There's like, I want to make this goddamn movie and it's going to look like this. It's going to be mythic and giant and awesome. Like in the literal sense of awesome, with those just power shots of the Highlands.
Certainly. Or even like when he jumps his horse out of an open window and falls into a lake.
Yeah.
I have seen this movie quite a few times, I should say. I watched it a bit as a kid. I had the two VHS version. It took a lot of tape to get that movie through. Because it's long. It's almost 3 hours, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
All of these movies, except for Annie Hall in this bunch, were like between 2 and 3 hours.
Yes. Some of them over 3 hours if you watch the extended edition.
Which I did not do, because I have a day job.
I do too, but I also don't have like anything else to do with my time. So, but yeah, I do want to say one thing I really don't like about Braveheart, which is the like virulent homophobia in the king's son character, the prince character.
Yeah, like if like that guy might as well be wearing a sandwich board that says this character is coded as gay. Get it?
He might as well be the Monty Python character from Holy Grail of the kid who's like singing in the tower. Like, it's the same character more or less.
Oh, the dude who goes, what the curtains?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, sure. This is a very Python-esque film. Try to imagine Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but played straight and with like a 10 times bigger budget.
And that's really into the idea of violent nationalism.
And and cleansing violence.
Yes.
It's a very violent movie. This is like, oh man. I could talk about Braveheart for like hours, but I can't because of the rules that we've set for ourselves.
Yeah, we only have about a minute left. Is there anything you want to get in before we have to move on to Sean Penn's Into the Wild?
I fucking hate that I like this movie this much.
Yeah, it almost feels like an issue. Like you're basically celebrating, open nationalism. You're celebrating open homophobia. You're celebrating Mel Gibson, who is not a great person to celebrate in any way. But at the same time, it's a really entertaining and enjoyable movie to watch.
Like this is like of the 4 movies this episode that we're covering, this is the one I'm likeliest to watch again.
Okay, fair enough.
So shall we tackle the boil on cinema's ass that is Sean Penn?
Yeah, I hate this man so much I don't even know where to start. Not only the fact that he's like allegedly abusive and allegedly like a lot of other terrible things, but also the fact that he paints himself as like the bleeding heart liberal of Hollywood.
Sure. And
then he makes super racist jokes about Iñárritu, right? When he was receiving an award.
Oh no. Oh shit. Did he make some joke about Mexicans or whatever?
He made a green card joke.
Oh.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, he's my buddy. It's fine. I can say that. I'm Sean Penn. I have Mexican friends. I can make those jokes. And then he wrote a book, which is one of the worst things I've ever read.
Yeah, that book apparently is quite bad.
It's awful. And he made that movie recently with Javier Bardem and Charlize Theron, right? Where they play like 2 people who fall in love in the middle of like an African war crisis, like while they're doctors trying to help like child soldiers not die.
That sounds like something I would not greenlight.
Yeah, it got booed at Cannes, I remember, and it never actually got an official release because the studio who was going to release it, or the production company, was like, I think we're good on that one.
The Last Face.
That sounds about the right title.
Yeah. And also, also starring Jean Reno Nadell. I'm never going to say her name correctly. From Blue is the Warmest Color. Exarchopoulos.
Okay, sounds as right as I would say it, or probably more correct. So
I don't speak Greek.
And I have read the book Into the Wild's based on. Honestly, this is the movie I was kind of dreading the most because knowing Sean Penn and knowing what he's like, I pretty much knew he was going to valorize Christopher McCandless going in, and he was going to make him into this Jack Kerouacian figure.
I was exactly going to say Jack Kerouac-esque.
Very much. Like, there's no way that Sean Penn doesn't adore On the Road, and this is his way to make On the Road without having the rights to that film. And the thing I found fascinating, and maybe like you'll disagree or agree on this, I'm interested to hear your opinion. Every time a character opened their mouth, I kind of hated it because they don't have anything interesting to say, and I think the things that are glamorized and the things that are promoted in this film are bad. And I think that Christopher McCandless was an idiot and not someone to actually glamorize it all. I think he was a 23-year-old. I probably would have said some dumb shit as a 23-year-old too. And I don't want anyone making movies about what I said when I was 23.
I was talking... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you continue.
I think the word that was bandied about when I was talking about this movie with Steph, my girlfriend, is anti-civ.
Yes.
This, like, there's no way to slice this movie or this story and not conclude that Chris McCandless was, at the very least, just misguided. Maybe shouldn't have put his money where his mouth was.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that there is something to a degree noble about the fact that he really believed this and he changed his entire life to make it happen. But the fact that you did something like that doesn't inherently make you exempt from criticism. And I see basically no criticism of McCandless in this film.
No, he's treated like it's a hagiography. He's treated like he's treated like a countercultural hero. This whole fucking movie feels like it could just be appended with a comma and the word "man" at the end of it.
yes, you're not wrong.
And a lot of that is just Sean Penn. It like you were saying, it smacks of Sean Penn. Sean Penn is not a good director.
No, he's not. And this is the thing that I kind of found almost frustrating and fascinating about this film, is that when people shut up, I actually kind of like it and I respect it in a weird way, and it evokes a certain feeling that a lot of other movies for me haven't evoked. I am someone who, I like hiking quite a bit. I like going into the woods. I like backpacking. I like those kinds of things. And there's a loneliness when doing those things by yourself that's very enjoyable. And being alone in a place where there's no other people and there's just wilderness all around you is satisfying and sad and melancholy and awesome. And there's moments in this film that get that feeling across. But then they have to ruin it by all of a sudden, like, people talking again. Or he does it with super weird, like, pointless on-screen text. Or he has that one scene where Christopher McCandless, like, is eating an apple and he's making jokes about the apple, literally looking into the camera.
Yeah.
Or there's the bit with Kristen Stewart, which is weird and, like, doesn't seem to lead anywhere. And it was before she became a really good actress, so it's not, like, acted particularly well, either between her or is it Emile Hirsch? It's
Emile Hirsch.
Yeah.
Who, to be fair, didn't get the meatiest role because, like, every other character in this film exists to basically portray McCandless as this martyr. There's a lot of martyrdom in these movies that we're covering, Michelle.
Yeah. Well, like, McCandless never does anything wrong, so all that Emile Hirsch can do is be this person that Sean Penn wants to idolize. I'll
say this about Case 2, though. Her singing Angel from Montgomery is one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Oh, no, I definitely agree. Great song.
Just because I like that song.
Her performance is a pretty good performance, I will say.
And basically everything involving Hal Holbrook, I'm down for.
Yes, I agree. I think those scenes are some of the more satisfying, even though the rhythms are kind of weird, but they have the best jokes. They have the best camaraderie in them scenes as well.
I think Holbrook is the person that Hirsch has the most chemistry with in the film, like, bar none.
Yeah, I mean, they try to do something with Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn's pretty good in this. I didn't mind
I think he's fine in it, but the thing they're trying to do with it doesn't really seem to pan out, and you don't understand what the background or context of the things are. He's just a guy who is doing something illegal, but they don't ever say what it is, right? Why he got arrested?
I think it was for illegal cable hookups. That's what I understood.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. And then he's also into UFOs, and he also happens to, like, own some company that employs people who work on farms or, like, the grain mill, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Which isn't really a character. Sorry, it's not really a character.
It's a collection of ticks.
Yes. Which I do want to say it's not much. It's very different in the book, in that the book is more of a chronicle of like looking at trying to track down things. It's more investigative reporting and lifestyle like writing. I don't think the book's great either, but I think it more effectively conveys why McCandless actually wants to leave home. I think it more conveys why he likes being alone in the wilderness, and it more effectively conveys the fact that he was kind of an idiot in what he was trying to do.
You didn't like the Eddie Vedder music, from what I understand.
No, it sucks. Although, to be fair, I did say in the chat that I just hate Pearl Jam in general. They're the worst grunge band. I think I said that I would prefer listening to Stone Temple Pilots over listening to Pearl Jam, which I think will get me kicked out of most places in Seattle, but Pearl Jam fucking sucks, and Eddie Vedder's songs in here aren't any better.
I will disagree with you on the Pearl Jam thing, because I like Pearl Jam. Because I think I signed a contract that I've got to like. I mean, Pearl Jam are the dad rock of the grunge bands.
Oh, certainly.
That's them. So I'm kind of bound by law to actually... I'm bound by dad law to like Pearl Jam.
Kind of like... I was going to say, kind of like Alice in Chains can also be a dad band. It's more of like a stoner dad band.
Sure. But I wasn't wild about the songs. Like, I think Eddie Vedder was trying to do what Neil Young did for Dead Man, but with words.
Yeah, and the Dead Man soundtrack is good because there's no words. That's part of the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, but I mean,
not to say that Neil Young's bad at words. Obviously, I like Neil Young, but
yeah. But the reason that the Dead Man soundtrack worked was because it was like instrumental and weird and fit the movie.
True. And I mean, this, to be fair, I think this soundtrack fits the movie Sean Penn wanted to make, which is a story about this backpacker hipster story about how great it is to hate civilization, but nothing specifically. He didn't have any specific politics. He was just like, oh, consumerism, man. And your parents sure suck.
Parents are a drag, man.
Yeah. We're running out of time on this one. Do we want to say anything else about Into the Wild?
Other than it sucks?
Oh, see, I don't think it sucks.
I don't like it very much, Michelle. I think of the 4 movies... yeah, actually, I'm going to go ahead and say that of the 4 movies that we watched, I actively disliked this one.
Interesting. I definitely disagree with that. I think I'm actually kind of at a toss-up between this and Braveheart, just because I think those moments that I said that work in Into the Wild do work very well. It's just that it doesn't have it can't sustain those. And I think the movie it was trying to be is a terrible film.
Yeah, I don't like the way it's put together. There's Sean Penn makes so many weird, bad decisions from a creative standpoint. And like the unity of vision that human shit-stained Mel Gibson brings to Braveheart is like, no, I'm going to have to put my chips on Braveheart. Okay,
that is fair. I think I'm totally fine going ahead with Braveheart because I think it's a far more consistent film. I think it's a film with a better idea of what it wants to be and a better way of executing on that.
I would agree.
Cool. So Braveheart it is then. Braveheart next round will go up against... Oh, I guess we decide that next.
Yeah, whoever wins between the next 2 films that we're going to be doing. Cinema Paradiso, our first foreign film. Our first, this is our first foreign film, right?
I mean, if you don't count, the UK as foreign. Okay,
so our second foreign. Directed by Giuseppe Tornatore, released in 1988. Winner at the Academy Awards, the prize for Best Foreign Language Film in 1990. And it's going up against the 203 seed $1 Million Baby, directed by everyone's favorite crotchety grandfather Republican filmmaker Clint Eastwood, released in 2004. 4 Oscar wins out of 7 nominations. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor. Based on the stories of FX Tool, and made...
Which, I just want to say, that's a name I love. I love that someone made their pen name FX Tool.
I think it's FX Tool. I can't read my own goddamn handwriting.
No, you're right. That is it.
Okay, cool. And made a pretty penny at the box office, $220 million. So, you didn't like Cinema Paradiso at all, didn't you?
No, I thought it's fucking terrible. I think it's of the films we've watched so far, I think it's by far the worst. I hated all, and I should say I watched the extended cut, which is 3 hours long. So I had to sit with this movie for 3 hours. I legitimately thought of messaging you and being like, hey, can I tap out and just say I didn't like it because I don't want to sit in this movie anymore. I didn't. I watched the whole thing, and I'm kind of glad I did because I think the last hour of the extended edition where we see a grown-up version of the Salvatore is his name?
Yes, or Toto, as he is known for a portion of the film.
The grown-up version of Salvatore, I think, is much more interesting and has more things to say, but at the same time, I think I described it on Letterboxd as an episode, as the episode of The Twilight Zone Walking Distance, but shitty the whole time, and it's 3 hours long. No, I think that this film doesn't portray childhood in a way that I personally saw interesting. I think that in general, films that are coming-of-age films are not good. I think that it's the genre or like theme that I identify with the least and I had the least sympathy for. I actually was looking through the films on my Letterboxd to see if there's any coming of age films, quote unquote, that I actually like. And I was coming up with stuff like Come and See, which is more of a war film about how terrible war is.
Yeah.
And films like that nature. I think that this kind of film is just so much of what I don't like in movies. It's so precious. It's so saccharine and like sugary sweet. And then it becomes just a fucking drag the entire way through. I'm interested to hear, did you like any part of this film?
I thought it was decent. That's about like it's. I know. What
I also did want to say that there's a montage at the end of kissing scenes. It's supposed to be like super famous. Everyone's like, oh, it's a wonderful, like one of the best endings in film. And the problem is they don't stick on the scene. They like don't show the whole thing. They keep cutting back to the character's face to see how he's reacting to this scene, when what we should be doing is sticking on the montage, watching it for like 5 minutes and actually getting what we're supposed to get out of it. It's so poorly directed, it's so poorly edited that it ruins the integrity and the interest of that scene itself.
Yeah, this is like a typical 3-star movie for me. It was fine. I thought it was okay. That's the thing. I kind of struggle to have an opinion on it, which I think is more damning than I mean it to be.
Yeah, because there's even the things that are like kind of good about the movie are really bland and not. They've been done better somewhere else.
Yeah.
And actually interesting to that is, speaking of Come and See, there's 2 scenes in this film that are kind of like the optimistic humanist version of 2 scenes that are in Come and See. I won't want to spoil what they are because you haven't seen Come and See yet, and I think you will really enjoy that film, so I don't want to really spoil anything, but
sure.
I'll just say the montage scene has a parallel in Come and See, and the theater burning down scene also has a parallel, and I think they're both done so incredibly better in Come and See that there's no competition.
Like, I like the film conceptually, like the idea of this film. Like, I like the idea of like, well, because the same reason I like the idea of like Walking Distance. It's like, you know, someone basically walking through their memories, right?
Yeah, but I think that this film weighs so heavily on the kid stuff, and that's most of what is in the theatrical cut, from what I understand. The stuff that got excised for the theatrical cut is a lot of the adult stuff,
okay,
which I found more interesting. But the kid stuff is so precious and so like, oh, isn't film magical? And like, yeah, film's magical and all that, like that bullshit. But
I don't know. I kind of like that bullshit.
Yeah, but it doesn't show it in a way that it's not Close Up. Like Close Up is the film we'll talk about later by Abbas Kiarostami that really shows why film is important and why film means something. And this film doesn't show that to me at all. It feels very facile, or it feels like the kind of film that if you're the exact kind of person who grew up in this circumstance, you would see yourself in this child, but it feels like masturbation for nostalgia, like nostalgic masturbation.
Which is weird because, I mean, there's a character who explicitly says at the end, like, you know, nostalgia, you know, you can shove it where the sun don't shine.
Yeah, and the film just doesn't back up that thesis.
Heed the call, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind the kids stuff. I thought it was, I think I have a higher tolerance for cute things.
I think you have a higher tolerance for cute kids.
Yeah, sure, okay. I'll bear that cross, sure. I'll be the guy on the pod that likes kids.
I mean, fuck you. Like, I don't hate kids. I just hate kids in movies.
Fair enough.
Unless they're like an anime. I guess I like when kids are in anime. That's fun.
I mean, we'll get to that too eventually.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of. I think almost all the anime films we're going to talk about have some kids in them, and I think that in general, the way that you have to portray melodrama through a child actor just isn't as evocative as having an animated child that can actually act properly and that can be voiced by an adult that sounds like a child. It gets the idea without being the truth, and I think in this situation, the truth of the situation is less interesting than the concept that is being buried by that truth.
I mean, I'm not I'm not this film's biggest fan, but I mean, it was a nice way to kill 2 hours. I thought it was sweet, but like, not what I would call remarkable.
Yeah, I just found it miserable straight through. But the next film I think is supposed to make me more miserable than I felt, but I still kind of enjoyed it. Do you want to talk about $1 Million Baby?
Let's talk about Clint. Let's talk about...
Yeah, sure.
This is the first time I saw this. Same thing with Cinema Paradiso. That was the first time. And I thought it was very good. I quite liked the film.
It went up significantly in my estimation. I had it at 2 stars on Letterboxd, and I went up to 3.5 for it, so...
Yeah, that's about where I'd park myself. I mean, maybe someone can convince me into like a gentleman's 4, but no, 3.5 sounds about right. Clint Eastwood is a hell of a director, isn't he?
Oh, he sure is. Like, we're going to talk about one of his films on the next episode, and I don't think this is one of his best films, but there's no doubting the fact that he's made a lot of good to great films and a couple stinkers.
Yeah, I mean, no one bats 1,000, but man,
and almost all films with, let's say, problematic relations to race and gender and things like that.
Yeah.
And America specifically, it's Clint Eastwood has always been one of those directors who he's always on the border of saying something I really dislike, but he very rarely crosses over to that. I think the times that he does, for example, American Sniper, I'm very much on the anti-American Sniper camp in that I think it does glorify Christopher Kyle. Okay. And the strange thing is that he's also the guy who made Letters from Iwo Jima, which is a film explicitly about like the toll that the war took on the Japanese and humanizes Japanese soldiers during World War II in a way that I can't think of any other American film that does that.
Yeah, Clint's really hard to pin down in that respect.
Yes.
This one looks amazing. It has just the way he uses just these blocks of like dark colors, not always black, but just these blocks of dark color, like you don't see anyone in the stands ever. You see the first couple rows, but you never see anyone beyond that. Everyone's always cast in shadow. It's very, very expressionistic, and it's fucking gorgeous. People are acting their ass off. Hilary Swank won Best Actress for this. Morgan Freeman won Best Supporting Actor for this. Even though I feel Morgan Freeman was kind of cruising in this.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like his hardest job, let's say.
And I was like really into Hilary Swank's performance. Like, oh yeah, I could dig this. And then the third act happens. Like, that's why she won the Oscar. Which
is unfortunate because I think that's the worst part of the film.
That is by far the worst part of the film.
Yeah. For those who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about spoilers on this podcast, so just do it. Hilary Swank gets paralyzed. She becomes paraplegic after a boxing accident / like a malicious act on her opponent's part.
Yep.
And she basically just wants Clint to kill her.
Yeah, mercy kill.
Yeah, and that's the whole plot for the end of the movie, basically. Nothing else really happens. I mean, her family comes in for a little bit, and they're trying to, like, con her out of some money, and she gets to have the good speech where she tells her family to go fuck themselves, which was satisfying just because they were pieces of shit.
Right.
But not because it actually means anything in the grand scheme of the film, I think. I think it hurts the film's point.
Yeah, this is a Paul Haggis script. And, Mr. Crash, if you don't know. Not the good one, the bad one.
Yes, the bad Crash.
The bad Crash. The Best Picture winning Crash. But, yeah, Hilary Swank gets confined to a fucking wheelchair and gets bed sores that you can fit cricket balls in, just so Clint Eastwood can have a fucking crisis about it.
Also, even though she's in like an incredibly nice care facility, like, like you don't really, obviously, like you can get bed sores if you stay in like one place for a long time. But the whole point of being in that care facility is that they move you and they turn you and they change, like they do enough so that you aren't getting these, like, they look almost gangrenous, like bed sores. They're fucking strange.
It's poor screenwriting is what it is.
And we should say there was a big outcry when this movie released that I think is very warranted, in that basically the film portrays becoming paraplegic as the worst thing that could ever happen to a person, and they would immediately want to be dead and they can no longer have a happy life, which is a really shitty thing to say about any disability, because there's plenty of paraplegic people who live wonderful lives. Like Stephen Hawking lived for so many years after he basically couldn't move his body. Obviously, that was a different disease that wasn't like becoming paralyzed in the same way. But the point is that by portraying being paraplegic as a death sentence, effectively, it really shits on the ability of people in those positions to have hope and to actually realize that there are positive things that can happen from there.
I think I figured out another reason why they're like, and something that might have massaged the outcry.
Would it be Jay Baruchel?
Well, Jay Baruchel probably would have contributed to that, yes.
But what else?
I just ran the numbers, and it turns out that this movie came out 2 months after Christopher Reeve died.
Ooh, not a great way to go. That's not a good look.
No, it's a terrible look. What the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of situations, Clint Eastwood is we talked about racist grandmas in a previous episode. He's your racist uncle who's not like on purpose racist or on purpose like ableist. He just doesn't understand what the implications of what he's saying are, and he so wants to get his metaphor, which he has said it's a metaphor about the American dream, blah blah blah, jerk off motion. But like,
can you make a movie about the death of the American dream and not be like a giant JO motion?
Probably not.
People have certainly tried.
Yeah, but with that said, that third act I think is very weak. There's a lot of things to like about this movie, like you talked about. The acting I think is pretty much across the board, besides Jay Baruchel, wonderful.
Jay Baruchel, what the fuck are you doing, bud?
Yeah, and also there's that you could have cut his character and not really had any difference.
No, Michael. Fuck, what's his name?
Anthony Mackie.
Anthony Mackie.
Yes.
Anthony Mackie could have beat the shit out of somebody else.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter like what's happening there.
He could have beat the shit out of Michael Pena. He was right there.
Yeah, definitely. And who doesn't love watching Michael Pena get the shit beat out of him? I'm kidding. I like Michael Pena. Michael
Pena is one of the hardest working dudes out there.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to be in the film, and there's a lot of things in this film that are so obviously leftovers from the short story that it's based on that don't actually work in context. Also, I just want to say, I think that the fight choreography and the fight shooting is bad.
It's not great.
Yeah, and we'll watch. There's a bunch of other boxing movies on this list, but even a movie that I wasn't huge on, Wilderness, that I just watched this year for the Fantastic Fest coverage, which is a Japanese film that's like 4 hours long or something like that.
Thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, even that, which is a film I didn't love, the boxing choreography is so much better and feels so more impactful and real. Whereas this one, it's so quick and nothing is actually like extended or long. It just is like in and out, almost like he didn't want to shoot it. I
mean, Clint kind of does work like that. I mean, dude has like, 2 takes of a scene and there it is. I mean, that probably explains his bad movies, too.
Yeah, certainly.
So how are we doing for time on this pairing?
We still have, I think, 5 minutes left to talk about $1 Million Baby.
Holy moly. Yeah, I certainly hope we didn't give Cinema Paradiso short thrift in terms of time.
No. We took all 10 minutes for Cinema Paradiso.
Uh-huh. I didn't know Clint Eastwood actually scored this film.
Did he?
Yeah, apparently.
Interesting. I had no idea. I can't remember a single note from the score, but I'm sure it was fine because I didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, it was probably perfectly... Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it did its job. I guess it worked. I'm kind of like scraping the barrel of things to talk about this movie. We've covered like the main things.
Which is a problem because it's the one that's going to move on.
Yes, I agree.
We should let's get that out of the way. Like, Cinema Paradiso, I hated it. You thought it was fine, but I think we both agree that $1 Million Baby is a better film. One thing that I'm kind of interested in talking about is why do you think this won Best Picture?
What was it up again?
That was 2004.
So let's see. 77th Academy Awards. It won Best Picture against The Aviator, Finding Neverland, Ray, and Sideways. So there's your fucking answer.
Man, there's like nothing. I mean, there's Sideways is fine, but
Sideways
like
is fine.
The rest of those are not wonderful films.
Like
The Aviator's also fine.
I mean, the only other ones that I've seen was Ray, which is fine. It's okay.
Yeah, Ray's all right.
So I think that explains it. I think it was just,
You know what? Finding Neverland's also all right. It was a year of all right movies in that Best Picture.
I mean, ain't that always the case? Isn't that the whole point of isn't the Oscars and the IMDb Top 250? Isn't that the whole gimmick of our show?
I mean, hey, 2007 had both No Country and There Will Be Blood in the same Best Picture category. So occasionally they'll get it right.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's fair. I mean, we should definitely use okay as a baseline at the very fucking least for, like, when we, like, reward something.
Are you saying that we shouldn't reward bad movies?
I think it's bad. I don't think it's best practice to reward shitty movies, and you can quote me on that.
That's a controversial position, but I'm willing to agree with you on this one.
The year after Million Dollar Baby 1 was the Crash year.
God.
This movie enabled Paul Haggis to do Crash, basically.
Yeah. Although I do want to say one nice thing about Paul Haggis, which is that his anti-Scientology work is actually pretty good.
Oh yeah. Like he got out and he's doing some great work. But
he just makes bad movies, which is fine. I've never made a good movie either, so you and me, Paul Haggis, we're the same basically.
You want to know what Crash beat for Best Picture?
Sure.
Brokeback Mountain, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck, and Munich.
Yeah, that's a slightly stronger group of nominees than the previous year.
Yeah, and the wrong movie won.
Yeah. So that's those two matchups done. So it looks like next 100 episodes later or whatever, Braveheart's going to be going up against Million Dollar Baby.
Oh, that's going to be a hell of a matchup. Mel and Clint. How do we wrap this up?
We have to talk about the next matchup, then we have to talk about social media, and then we do the catchphrase.
Our catchphrase. All right, so that's that for this week. And next week, or next time, because this is a bi-weekly show, we're going to be covering the next group of 4 movies. So the next 2 matchups, which are Unforgiven, so we're going to contend with Clint again, versus The Bridge on the River Kwai by David Lean, and Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring by Peter Jackson, and Annie Hall by Woody Allen.
I'm going to be honest, I think this was a weak slate of movies we had today. I think next week's is a lot more interesting.
I think next week's is a lot more interesting. I think I agree with you.
Hopefully this episode wasn't too bad, though. I always hope that, though. That's fingers crossed every episode.
I think that our natural charisma and deep knowledge of the cinematic arts will see us clear to fortune, fame, and podcasting glory.
Yeah, because a deep knowledge of film did so much for Filmstruck. R.I.P. Filmstruck.
Rest in peace. Gunned down in its prime.
Like, literally only 2 years old. Fucking ridiculous.
You know what else died when it was 2, right? The Dissolve.
God, like, everything good about film dies when it's 2, I guess.
Dies when it's 2. So on that very depressing note for the future of cinephilia. Where
can you find us on the web?
Oh man, everywhere. Just we are the specter that haunts the internet. But more specifically, you can find us on Twitter at middlebrowpod. You can find us individually on Twitter. I'm at Derek_G.
I'm at Space Jam Fan.
And if you want to drop us a line, because you are Team Cinema Paradiso and you want to give Michelle what for, I'm not including myself in this because I thought it was okay. You can send an email to us at middlebrowmadness@gmail.com. Is that correct?
That is correct. middlebrowmadness@gmail.com. I do want to shout out my dad emailed us the other day and said it was really good. So good job.
Thanks, Papa Arf.
So until next time, I've been Michelle Arf.
I've been Derek Gade. Was it Have Movies Be Jolly?
That's the one. Sweet. Good night, everybody.
Good night.